Hey guys, Andy here. So I'm going to try and give you the short version of why Android Andy has got a MacBook. The short version is I've been learning to code over the last couple of years. Started off Java, Android apps, moved on to PHP, MySQL, all that sort of thing. And I just figured if I was going to be a coder, I need to have a rough idea of how you code an iOS app. Now, Apple being Apple, they basically don't let you do this unless you do it on a Mac. So I figured, all right, well, what's the cheapest way I can do that? And the cheapest way was a MacBook Air. I did that in March. I thought this gives me the opportunity to try a MacBook, to try Mac OS, see how I get on with it. If I like it, then I step up to something a little bit more powerful. I did like it. Well, I mean, I could cope with it, I suppose might be a better way. And I thought, yeah, I would like something a bit more powerful to try and sort of... It's just a little bit frustrating on a low-end laptop when you're having to wait for things all the time, even if it's just Gmail sort of loading up the page before you can click on an email. So there was a particularly good price on John Lewis on the 2018 MacBook Pro. It was like I think they were price matching Currys, who did £180 off. Then with my discount, I got, I mean, almost £400 off the list price for me. I couldn't really resist that. I thought this is my opportunity. So I did it. I think it was Christmas Eve. I picked it up, and I've been using it over the Christmas period, which has been a really good time for me to test because a lot of the time I don't use my laptop much. Maybe it's the Sunday night when I'm in front of the American football on the TV. I've got the laptop doing bits and pieces, but otherwise I've got my main computer. I don't really need it. But actually over the holidays, I go away for a few days, and it's good to be able to take a laptop with me to use. So it's been quite a good opportunity for doing some testing. If we start with kind of the design and the build, I mean, it's a lovely device, it really is. The bezels are still a bit bigger than you will see on some other sort of top-end laptops, but they're obviously much smaller than, well, than I'm used to from the MacBook Air, for example. And the overall just build quality, the all-metal body, just the look of it, I think it is a really nice device, even if I probably should have cleaned it a little bit before we started this video. It's 1.49 centimeters thin, which is, I think, a little bit thicker than the MacBook Air, and the Air sort of tapered to an end at the front, and this doesn't do that, but that's fine. It still feels small, light, and portable. It's 1.37 kilograms to be precise, which to me is just fine. The actual hardware itself is the CPU is a 2.3 gigahertz 8th gen i5. Which will turbo boost up to 3.8 gigahertz. There's 8 gig of RAM running at 2133 megahertz. It's LPDDR3 RAM. If you go for the MacBook 15, you can get DDR4. You generally get a more powerful machine. And part of me thought, oh, maybe I'd like to have done that. But actually, I wouldn't be getting the bargain that I was getting. I'd have been paying a lot more money for it. So I need to just be happy with what I've got, I think. It does have a separate graphics processor in there. It's an Intel Iris Plus Graphics 655. I was quite pleased to find that that would run Overwatch, no problems. You can dual boot the MacBook. I'll come into that a bit later, but I did that and I installed Overwatch. And I was playing at 1080p at around 50 to 70 frames per second, which to me is fine. The graphics settings were on low, but that's okay. To me, Overwatch is not a game about sort of how amazing it is or anything. It's just the playability, and it was quite playable. I played a few other games on the PC side of things. PC Building Simulator, again, definitely not a graphically intensive game. That was running fine. You can game in Mac OS, so you can install Steam and you just look for the games that are installable on Mac OS. So Rocket League is a good example. I had a bit of a blast on that, which is quite good fun. It does lag here and there. There's one point where I boosted through one of the other cars and you blow them up, but there was a bit of lag before or sort of while the explosion was being calculated, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But otherwise, generally, it was quite smooth. It does get a little bit warm when you're playing games and you're really pushing the system. The fans will kick in at some point, and I mean, some people say it's noisy. I want to say it's noisy. I wouldn't really notice it over the gaming, but it will make noise. On the outside, you'll see it's got 4 USB or Thunderbolt 3 USB Type-C connectors, which can do charging. They can do DisplayPort. It can be Thunderbolt up to 40 gigabits per second. It's USB 3.1 Gen 2 up to 10 gigabits per second. There's also an ambient light sensor, which I think is involved in the True Tone display. We'll come to that in a little while. It has Bluetooth 5.0. It has a low profile keyboard, which generally I actually really quite like. It's not that far from typing on a screen, it's such low profile. But it's nice and sort of clicky, although it is quieter than previous versions apparently. But it is very, very tactile. I love the backlit, obviously. You can't particularly see it at the moment because it's underneath underneath my bright lights, but that's quite nice that it illuminates. And it feels good to type at speed. There's new for this version, there's a membrane underneath the keyboard, which is apparently to stop debris ingress. So in other words, bits of crud getting through your keyboard. We also have Touch ID on this version, which has been very fast and reliable for me. I do quite like that. It's a bit of a pain when you open up your laptop each time you've got to type your password in. Well, on this, you just touch with your finger and in you go. So I like that. It can also be used for buying things on the App Store to authenticate. So yeah, generally quite pleased with that. The trackpad is often talked about as being one of the sort of a high point of MacBooks, and actually I can see why. They are very nice. I mean, it's a huge big trackpad. It's very responsive. I love the gesture controls that you get when you get the hang of them. It's got force touch, so when you press down particularly hard, it's supposed to do certain things, and I haven't, maybe it's just I'm not used to it. I haven't really used that at all, if I'm very honest. I actually quite like the touch bar as well, because let's be honest, it's not often you actually use function keys. I can still get to them, press F, the function key in the corner, and I get the actual function keys. But otherwise, it's showing. So in fact, we can turn up. Actually, that's the screen brightness. Where's the, there we go. You got media controls. In fact, I was playing. Let's see if we can. Hey Siri, open my documents.
Here's that folder.
So you see in the touch bar, you actually get like a trackpad that you can. Just little things like that. I think it's quite cool. I mean, it's not all that necessary, I suppose, but I think it's quite smart. So yeah, I do like the touch bar. It's not essential by any means, but when you get to change the volume and you get a tracking slidey thing that you can, you know, I just think that's quite handy. Why not? Same with the brightness. Just seems, yeah, as opposed to not having it, I'm a fan of having it. One thing missing I did notice was an SD card slot. So we've got those 4 USB Type-C connectors around the outside. It would have been quite handy to have just a little SD card or a micro SD card reader perhaps, but it's not massively important. I suppose until we really get the hang of USB Type-C though, so I've not got any USB Type-C memory card readers. I'd have to get an adapter to plug a regular memory card reader into it. Not a massive problem though. I wasn't quite sure what to call this bit about, kind of just it being using it as a media device, I suppose, both consumption-wise and so whatever, media consumption-wise. The screen is a 13.3 IPS LCD backlit screen. The max resolution is 2560 by 1600, and that's 227 pixels per inch, which if you compare to phones isn't that great, but on a laptop, yeah, that's a pretty high resolution. And I think it does look, I think it looks fantastic generally. It does have this True Tone technology, which basically it uses a light sensor to get the sort of temperature of the lighting of the room you're in, so that it can match the screen to that lighting to give you the correct temperature. If you're not sure what that means, basically if you imagine just a white screen, a cold screen, there would be a bit of a blue hue to the white. A warm screen, there'd be a bit of a sort of pinkish reddish, and it wants just white to look white. So it uses the True Tone technology to do that. It goes up by the specs to a 500 lumens as maximum. Now I got my meter out and it got to about 450. I'm okay with that, that's fine. And again, if you compare that to phones, that's not particularly bright, but on a laptop, it's fine. I mean, I also tried my light meter on my monitors that I use. Actually, they were like 350, and I never have. It's not like I'm ever thinking, oh, they're a bit dark. They're fine. So the laptop going up to sort of 450, 500, plenty bright enough. Excuse me. It does have a 720p FaceTime camera up in the top row, in the top bezel of the screen there. And here's a little sample so you can hear what that sounds like and looks like. This is a sample recording from the 720p webcam. I've switched it up from, it defaults to like high quality, so I've switched that up to maximum. And of course we're using the microphone that's built into the MacBook Pro as well. So it has stereo speakers as well. Now again, I thought, well, you know, why not? I'll measure them against with my sound meter, comparing them to how my phones have all recorded, and they were pretty loud. So they averaged 90.4 decibels, which actually isn't the loudest. The OnePlus 6T is the loudest, which averaged about 96 decibels. But these generally they sound better. They're bigger speakers, therefore you've got more space for bass and just a generally more rounded sound. So let's just try.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So they're not like amazing. They're not, I wouldn't want to sort of be showing my mates we're watching a movie for a couple of hours using these speakers necessarily, but they're plenty good enough. I have sat and watched some Netflix on the MacBook, and the sound, you know, it's not a problem, it's not an issue. At the same time, to be honest, I'm generally going to be wearing headphones of some kind when I do my media consumption, which of course is fine. You connect Bluetooth into your headphones. There was no audio delay or anything like that. So yeah, the speaker's generally pretty good. There are mics, so we've already kind of heard a demo of the 720p FaceTime camera. There are 3 mics built into the MacBook to try and give you better audio, and I think generally it did sound pretty good. There is also, on the one side, if we can see, a 3.5mm headphone jack. So their phones don't have it, but their MacBooks do. So all in all, I think for media consumption, yes, it's a pretty good unit. So software-wise, I'm not going to spend a long time in macOS or talking about macOS because, quite frankly, I don't know a lot about it. I'm still only been using it for, well, I suppose 8 months or so, and I'm still learning things as I go. I do find I have to install, so I've got a few different things along the top bar there, like scroll reversal and things like that. So when you do use a Bluetooth mouse, the scroll wheel will work backwards to how the touch bar, so you have to have software that reverses that. The back and forward buttons don't work by themselves, so you have to have something that enables that. But generally, it is a very smooth operating system. Everything sort of is slick and smooth and quick, and I generally have no issues. If it's just sort of browsing, and I've not tried hardcore video editing in it yet because I don't know the hardware is going to particularly cope with that, but the OS itself generally is pretty smooth, and as I think I showed you earlier, it does have Siri built into the actual OS this time, which I don't think they've done on their MacBooks before. Hey Siri, what's the weather like today?
Here's the weather today.
I'm not a big Hey Siri fan. Sorry, not you. No, I didn't notice it. And in fact, generally, I think Siri is talked about as being not as good as things like Google Assistant and even Cortana perhaps. But yeah, it's not a big thing for me, but I guess it's probably quite handy that it's there. So I mentioned earlier you can dual boot. It's actually surprising. I didn't realise how easy it was, and this was one of the factors that made me think I'm going to get a more powerful MacBook. So you basically download Boot Camp, which is supplied, I don't know if it's directly by Apple, but it's available in the App Store. So you download that, you download a Windows ISO, so I downloaded the Windows 10 ISO, and an ISO is just like a disk image that it can sort of mount and run as if it was a disk. So you download those. You might need to buy a license for Windows 10. I say might because I'm actually fairly sure it will run without a license. You just miss out on some of the sort of fancier things, like, I don't know, I forget exactly what it was, changing your wallpaper, I forget what it was. Or you'll have a little mark in the corner saying this is not licensed. But I'm fairly sure it will run no problems without a license. If you did want to buy them, I found one on Amazon for like £10 and it seems to be fine. I'll try and remember to put a link down below. If you're going to do it, please use my link because I get a few pennies. So when you've got all that, you run the Boot Camp, and it says where's your ISO image. So you need to have that either on like a memory stick or on the actual device. There it is. And then it says, okay, well, how do you want to partition your drive? So I don't think I even mentioned, actually, it's 250 gigabytes of solid state drive on this one. So I just went like 125. I don't really know if the Windows side is going to have games on it. It will need quite a bit of space, I thought. So I split it half and half. It says, righto, give me a minute, I'll come back to you. And it basically just does it all for you. To then swap between one to another, as you're booting up, you hold down the option key and it comes up, gives you kind of two different drives to select from, and you pick which operating system you want. If you don't hold on the option key, I think mine now boots into Mac OS by default. I think you can set that. I think I actually had to set that on the Windows side of things, but you can probably do it somewhere on the Mac OS side of things. The touch bar does still work in Windows, but it's a bit more basic, so it will change the sort of screen brightness, the backlit brightness, or you hold the function button for it to be just the function keys, or the other way around. Obviously it doesn't get the integration that the touch bar in macOS has. In macOS, if you're on a web page, it'll show you a certain set of things. If you're, like we saw when we were playing the media, it gives you the different buttons to press on that. You're not going to get that. I think the F keys were default, and you press the function to show the volume and the brightness options. So yeah, I mean, I was just amazed how easy it was. I didn't think that was very Apple-like, to be honest, to say, yeah, you can put Windows on it if you like. But yeah, it really is that simple, and why not, almost, in some ways. So if we're talking about the battery, it was quite hard to find specs for the battery. I think the official word was built-in 58 watt-hour lithium polymer battery. I didn't really know what that meant. I found somewhere else that it said 5,000 milliamp hours. That's not very big. That's not that much bigger than my phone battery. And then I did wonder about the screen brightness thing. Well, it's only kicking out sort of, I don't know, 250, 300 lumens off the screen brightness. But it is a big 13-inch screen. So it kind of blows my mind. If 5,000 milliamp hour battery will get kind of 10 hours battery, 10 hours use, which is what they claim, and I think I would probably believe that. I've no reason not to. I've generally got good battery life from it. That's a lot out of 5,000 milliamp hours. But battery life generally is pretty good. When I switched over to Windows and I was gaming with Overwatch, I was burning through battery quite quickly. I wouldn't imagine I'd get more than maybe 3 hours of gaming if I did that. But that's with everything going full crock. I mean, I don't know if I'd even get 3 hours, to be honest. It really was burning through battery. But one of the positives, I think, is that although I did love the old mag lock on the MacBook Air where it sort of magnetised, clicked itself into place, you don't have that anymore, but you have USB Type-C. So one point over Christmas, I went to visit somebody and I didn't take my charger with me, but actually I realised, ooh, my MacBook is getting a bit low on battery. And it was basically borrowed my brother's phone charger for his Pixel, which is 15 watts. I plugged that in, 90 minutes later I had 37% more battery. That's not too bad. I mean, it's not a great charging rate. We're looking from empty to full in kind of 4 hours or so. That's not great, but the fact that I didn't have my charger and I could just borrow someone's phone charger to charge up, that's actually really good. Now, this 13-inch version comes with a charging brick, obviously the 61 watts, which is pretty high power. As I say, most phones are kind of 10 watts, 15 watts. So 61 is pretty high. I have ordered a kind of a spare from eBay. I think I found one at about £20, but generally you're looking at about 60 odd quid for the charger. That will obviously charge it up in a much quicker rate. I think it's kind of an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours at most. But generally battery life is really very good. So in conclusion, I do think it's a fantastic bit of kit. The build quality is amazing. Feels good just to kind of hold. I think it looks fantastic. I think the screen looks fantastic. The keyboard's great to use. The speakers sound good. The actual OS is slick. It's smooth. It's fast. I suppose it was interesting. I asked on a forum. I said, you know, why do you guys like MacBooks so much? What might I be missing out on? And one of the responses was along the lines of, well, it's the whole ecosystem. It's the MacBook, it's the iPhone, it's how they work together, it's my this, that, and the other. And I did think, well, am I therefore, you know, part of what you pay for is the ecosystem, and I'm not in that ecosystem. So to an extent, I'm paying more than I should, or I'm not getting the benefits that others are. Out of interest, I just went to Dell and had a look how much their sort of similar spec laptops are. About £800. That was actually a 15-inch screen. I don't know if they even do it as a 13-inch. So maybe Dell can't cram that much power into a smaller device. I'm not sure. But these are £1,750. A similar, and I did. This is just a very quick look. I don't know precisely it's the same spec, but a similar spec machine was 800. Even if they're a bit slower, and I think it was DDR4 RAM actually. And this is only DDR3. So you are paying a lot more for a MacBook. There's no denying that. But at the same time, there's no denying that it is good hardware. It is really good hardware. And I guess whether it's worth it or not is really down to you. And that's in many. A lot of people say, "What phone should I buy? Is this phone worth it? Is this headphone better than those?" And I can't prescribe. I can't just define if something is worth it for you. I give you as much information as I can. I tell you about the devices. I show you as much evidence as I can of why they're good or not, and then it's down to you to decide if you think it's worth the price that you would pay. So again, I didn't pay $17.50. To me, yeah, I'm quite happy with what I've got. I don't know that I'd pay $17.50 for it. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd really love to hear them, especially because I guess probably a lot of my viewers are Android users and might not like Apple. I would just ask you to have an open mind. I do with Jim. I think it's wrong just to sort of dismiss something because it's been made by Apple. And don't get me wrong, I don't like Apple. I don't know how they do things, but this is a good bit of hardware, I think. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, my name's Andy, and I'll catch you all again soon. Well done, and thank you for making it to the end of the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, you might want to click the little fellow that should hopefully appear about here to subscribe. You may also want to check out some of my other videos, which are going to appear somewhere there. Also, come and have a look at my website, androidandy.uk. There is also a forum. Come and say hello on the forum. If you've got any questions about things, or request me to review things, or anything else, just come and have a chat on the forum.